My name is Dr. Leon Barron and I'm a reader in Analytical and Environmental Sciences at Imperial College London. And what we do is test the environment for the presence of chemicals. Where they are, where they go, what happens to us as a result of being exposed to them, but also, like here in the River Thames, what happens to our fish and our ecosystems. About 10 years ago, we started looking at chemicals in the River Thames because of the issue of sewage overflows. And at that time, we focused mainly on pharmaceuticals because they're an indicator of anthropogenic activity in a region. That's since expanded massively. So we've gone from pharmaceuticals and medications, which often include several thousand compounds, to their metabolites, to pesticides as well. Now more recently we're moving into other things like tire wear and also into forever chemicals like PFAS. Originally we started looking at pharmaceuticals. The main reason for that was because they're generally a marker of an urban area, a population using a broad set of chemicals. But particularly we wanted to look at substances that were bioactive by design. So they're designed specifically to have an effect on an organism. So that was the main reason to start with those, to see if they have effects in humans, could they potentially have an effect in fish or in wildlife in rivers. And that then progressed into pesticides. They obviously have an effect to kill pests, but there are many problems with pesticides in that they often kill things that they're not meant to. So it's off-target effects. So we wanted to see whether the use of certain pesticides, both in an agricultural setting, but also in an urban setting, we wanted to see whether that effect was causing similar issues like pharmaceuticals. We have these off-target effects. One particular class of chemicals within the pesticides that we focused on a lot are pet parasiticides that we use on our dogs and cats, and many of those are also PFAS compounds. So we've started at that point to look at the intersection with PFAS, and then from there went forward to look at PFAS as a whole group itself, which is about nearly 15,000 chemicals in themselves. So we need very broad-ranging analytical techniques to be able to decipher what's in a sample, to separate it and detect it, as well as perform the risk assessment. The last group of chemicals that we look at are tire wear. So we've often heard about microplastics and things like that. Tire wear is generally sources from rubber. It's a non-tailpipe emission from traffic. And within the tires, not only the rubber breaks down into smaller pieces, but also the chemicals that are added to that rubber to make them function properly and to have good performance on roads, they start to leach out of that material. And those can be particularly damaging to fish. So a whole new area we're looking at now is to try and look at the impact of the tire wear dust on roads and it running off from rainfall and first flush events into rivers like the Thames. Behind me is one of the building sites for the super sewer, which has launched already, and it's opening slowly between now and next year. The aim is to reduce pollution in the Thames by 95% by capturing all the dry weather and wet weather spills that occur roughly once a week in London. London is sort of pioneering an activity to have a very grand engineering challenge to build a pipe running under the whole of London, underneath the Thames, to capture the overflows from Bazalgette's original sewer system on the embankment on the other side here. And so what that will do is it will, in times of heavy rainfall, to stop the sewage coming back up onto our streets and into our homes, it'll act as an overflow. And that will be taken all the way to East London into Beckton Treatment Works, which has expanded its capacity to be able to cope with that added influx of wastewater. So really the hope is, at least here for the tidal Thames and the tideway, we'll see a reduction in these spills, which means that hopefully people can start to use the water a little bit more, and most importantly that it breathes a bit new life into the river and that we don't end up poisoning the aquatic life here. I think there are some challenges, and I think these are things for monitoring that would need to be looked at. Firstly, the Thames is not the only river in London. It is certainly the end of the basin, if you like. We would want to see how the Thames upwards of the super sewer is impacted by towns and cities further upstream, and how those chemicals and other pollutants will work their way down into the tideway, and how that would really be impacted here. And the second thing is, obviously we have small tributaries around London that all feed into the Thames. How they may be connected or connected into the future to the super sewer, to try and make sure that really the urban blue-green space that we've got in cities that people use every day, perhaps even more than the River Thames, are accessible to people and not a public health risk. From 2019 through 2021, we sampled all along here. We did 14 waterways across London, over 300 sites, and tested using rapid LCMS to find out what was in the water. And what we found in that scenario was that basically during a time of a pandemic, chemicals in the river actually dropped. It was very like the air pollution, it dropped. People weren't moving around, there were no communicable diseases going around as much apart from COVID, and people were isolating. People weren't travelling to the city, as a result they didn't bring in stuff and contribute to the rivers. Where I'm going with this is that we need to make sure to keep monitoring in a way that we have a reliable baseline post-pandemic, so we can see really before, during and after the implementation of the super sewer. So at this point we've just sampled the Thames again in 2024, just around the time that the super sewer is starting to open. And as it completes its schedule for opening, we'll continue monitoring all the way from Teddington all the way out to East London. And we'll see hopefully there being a reduction in the chemical constituents of pollution in the river as a result. So we're midway through it. We're back now at the Environmental Research Group in White City. We normally have a bag full of these samples ready to go and be processed here before they're analysed on our mass spectrometry system. So what we do here is very simply, we add some internal standards to this to do some quantification of a target set of analytes. Usually in any off-the-shelf method that we've got, we have anywhere between 50 and 200 different compounds, be they pesticides, pharmaceuticals, PFAS, tire wear, whatever. They're spiked in here using usually deuterated standards, and then we run that, we filter it, and then we run it directly. So when we inject that, we're injecting only about 10 microliters. So we can do an awful lot with just that small sample, really, really quite a lot. And so that allows us to do not just targeted analysis with our triple quads, but also do untargeted and suspect screening work on our 9030 system, which is a QTOF. So in wastewater, one of the key things we needed was speed and sensitivity, because we were hoping to have a very large number of samples to monitor over a relatively short period of time. So we selected an LCMS 8060 instrument to do rapid LCMS of 140 different chemicals in wastewater. I think the really nice thing about the process there is that really all we needed in the end was to take a water sample like this, which is quite small, filter it and directly inject it onto the LCMS system, and we could get sensitivity down to the single-digit nanogram per litre concentration level, which really opened up a whole new world for us to be able to explore what's in wastewater. And I think, you know, the real importance of that is what comes out of us goes into our wastewater system. So you immediately now enable a way to monitor entire populations or entire catchments in just a single bottle, which also means if you can minimize the sample size, because you're directly injecting it now, you don't have to have very large storage requirements to keep these frozen. So what would previously be required is a whole freezer park to store very large samples, because they would normally need to be concentrated using solid phase extraction or something like that. Now we're just using a very small sample, and we can actually do an awful lot with that. So in that sense, the whole process revolved around the speed and sensitivity of the instrument we had and the methods we developed on them, but had a knock-on effect throughout the whole process in making it far more sustainable and you know, really quite efficient.
My name is Dr. Gennady Ilyushenko. I am a senior business specialist at Shimadzu, and I look after key accounts like Dr. Leon's Barron lab. Shimadzu's analytical instruments are suitable in any laboratory which requires analysis of chemicals to one degree or another. For example, pharmaceutical labs in a QC or drug discovery, in environmental labs where you need to process dirty matrices, the robustness of the instruments come in place. In clinical labs to analyze biomarkers or the drug tapering, whichever. So as long as you're doing some kind of analysis, chemical analysis, elemental analysis, we are there to support it. For Dr. Leon Barron's laboratory specifically, it is the robustness and sensitivity of our instruments that do the trick. You will hear him talking about cutting down the times of analysis, so the speed in which we can acquire the data is very, very important for the high through. The quicker you can acquire that data, the more samples you can run, the more data you can then release, analyze and proceed with. Also, we have to think about the robustness of the instruments, how often you have to clean them, how often you have to service them. Our instruments are so robust, so even when you throw the dirty matrices, i.e. unclean samples, our instruments can tolerate that kind of matrices and excellent for getting data.
That's the difference, by the way, between the samples we would have had to take versus the ones we take now. So that's the difference in the size of freezer space we would need. Dr. Helena Rapp-Wright, who's a member of my team, has led a sustainability project in collaboration with the Royal Society of Chemistry and from within the School of Public Health here at Imperial to really look across our whole process and has studied all of the different elements of our processes to ensure the sustainability is really, really high. And we're hoping to have accreditation of the lab for that fairly soon.
My name is Dr. Helena Rapp-Wright. I'm a research associate in the Emerging Chemical Contaminant team at the Environmental Research Group in Imperial College London. Sustainability is now becoming more important and it's part of mainly the research of a lot of labs across the world. And one of the problems that we've been having is that the consumption of energy and water and plastics in laboratory environments is actually quite high. So we got this grant from the Royal Society of Chemistry to investigate the feasibility of reusing different types of plastics in laboratory setups. Now, because of the mass spectrometry and that we are able to investigate many compounds really quickly, we can start looking at if the plastics that we are trying to reuse pose a carryover from the chemicals that we're analyzing in the lab, and if they don't, then we're able to reuse them. So that's the main purpose of the project. And we've worked with the Sustainability Working Group. I'm the chair in the Imperial College London in the Medical Research Centre, and we've been working with people from the team and also students coming from other institutions to try and see how we can make not only the mass spec and the sample preparation methods, but the lab itself more sustainable. For the main investigation of reusing plastics, we are mainly using targeted analysis. So we are looking at specific chemical compounds that we use on a daily basis in the lab, wide range of compounds because we want other people to start reusing, so we want to test as many chemicals as we can. And we use targeted to see the exact carryover that is carried across the reuse of these plastics. But because we wanted to investigate as well the potential matrix effects when you reuse plastics with different matrices, we're also using untargeted analysis to see if we find extra chemicals and to widen the scope of the composition of the samples as well. We are finishing the project at the moment, and we found that many of the plastics that we tested, mainly pipette tips, because they are quite common across any laboratory in the world and in many, not only in environmental analysis, but also other type of research. So the plastic pipette tips, we are able to reuse most of them. We try different brands and different tips. We're able to reuse them up to 40 times. However, it does vary a little bit depending on the solvents that we tested, the carryover. So some of them work better than other ones. And now we're trying to see if the more sustainable solvents are the best options in order to reuse them. And we're finishing the life cycle assessments for the sustainability of the solvents.
We're part of the Environmental Research Group at Imperial. So everything we do is trying to understand our environment, but also this sustainability element is embedded in everything we do, including in our practice in the laboratory. So we've been able to try and optimize our processes so that they're not creating large amounts of plastic waste or needlessly using certain steps in our pre-concentration or our sample prep process where it generates lots of needless waste. So really it was a case of getting the right instrument to be able to measure things directly where possible. This also has a knock-on effect in the sense that we can run things very quickly, meaning we don't use as much organic solvent in the LCMS elution profile. And as a result, the whole process from start to finish, we were able to then characterize. So we've got a very rapid method, very sensitive down to very low nanogram per litre concentration levels. And we were able to then test at very large scales every step in the process before that. Everything from sampling, contamination, the plasticware we use, the bottles we use. We're able to gather that information extremely quickly and then decide which bits we can drop or alter to make the process just ultimately more efficient and more sustainable. And that method really enabled all of that to happen. Group of chemicals that's currently on the list for a lot of discussion and likely going towards regulation is PFAS. So these forever chemicals, they're designed not to break down. You know, they're very, very stable and they stay for a very long period of time. And what we don't know really yet is whether they're actually at the doses we expect in our tap water and in our food, whether they're actually having a human impact. So my feeling is they will move forward towards a regulation just because of their persistence, their ability to bioaccumulate and the evidence so far of their toxicity. The last point is we urgently need a revision of chemical strategy here in the UK, specifically regarding water pollution. At this point, we're obviously at the point where we've left the EU and we're on our own. At this point in time, we're still aligning with the EU, and I hope that continues because many of the parts are quite good for the EU Water Framework Directive. But I do feel that we need a chemical strategy here for Britain to make sure that its rivers are improved. It is quite a unique case here. Britain's rivers are under impact from chemicals, perhaps in a slightly different way than other countries in the EU, and I think it needs its own strategy to make sure that that's implemented fairly quickly.